Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Michelle Ferguson. I am the crochet pattern designer of Two Brothers Blankets. You can find me at twobrothersblankets.com, on Facebook and Instagram at Two Brothers Blankets, and right here on YouTube every week for a new crochet related video. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel and click the like button if you like what you see. If you want to be notified every time I upload a new video, please click the bell at the top of your screen. Alright, so today we are going to get into something that I get a lot of questions about, and I've talked about it before, but I kind of want to go really in depth with this video on just this specific topic. And so today we are talking about ease. Ease can be a little confusing, but once you figure out what it is and how to decide what kind of ease you want, it's really quite simple. So let's get started. Okay, so what is ease when it comes to garments, crocheting, knitting, even just store-bought garments from the store? So ease is basically the difference in the body measurement and the garment measurement. It's that simple. It's just the difference. So there's three different types of ease. There's positive ease, which means that the garment measurement of your sweater that you're making is going to be measure more than the body measurement. So for example, if you have a sweater, size small is the body size for a body size bust of 34 inches. The sweater is going to measure 36 inches around. 2 inches of positive ease. It's going to be more than the body size. If your garment has no ease, that means it's going to measure the garment is going to measure the same as the body measurement. So let's do size small again. Size small is a body measurement bust of 34 inches. The garment is also going to measure 34 inches around. And then lastly, there's negative ease. So negative ease is when the garment is going to measure less than the body size measurement. So if you have a size small, 34-inch bust body size, and with a 2-inch negative ease, the sweater garment is going to measure 32 inches around. I hope that makes sense. So there's positive no ease and negative ease. And that's what is meant when you see it on a pattern or a listing and it says garment has 2 inches of positive ease. That way you know this garment is going to measure 2 inches bigger than whatever body size measurement they give you for that size. So figuring out the ease in patterns. When you're looking at a pattern from a designer, especially a garment, you want to know what the ease is for that garment, for that sweater or whatever. So usually some garments will let you know the ease and then also give you the finished size. So you don't have to do any math or figure it out. It'll usually say something like body size, finished size. So the body size is what you would measure for your body. So a size small, if it was 34 inches, you would measure, if you measured 34 inches, you were a size small. And then finished size would be 36 inches. You would know that the sweater is going to come out at 36 inches around, not 34, because you know that it has 2 inches of positive ease. Some don't though. I honestly did not put finished measurements in all of my garments when I first started out. Now I do that because it's just so much easier for the crocheter, but I didn't realize that ease was such a difficult, was not as known as, how to calculate it or figure it out, as it is. And that there were so many questions around it. So I didn't at first, but now I have started doing that. But sometimes you may not have the finished measurements in the pattern. It might just say body size, garment has 2 inches of positive ease. So that way you would need to figure up what your finished garment is going to be, because you want to be able to check your measurements and stuff like that as you work. So if it said size small has a 34-inch bust, garment has 2 inches of positive ease, you need to add 2 inches to that body size to figure out what your ease is, what your measurement is going to be for the garment. So you would add 2 inches and it'd be 36 inches. It might say 6 inches, it might be slightly oversized. You would add the 6 inches and then you would need to have a 40-inch circumference for your sweater. So that's how you finish that or figure that out. You would just add or subtract if it has just the body size. To figure out your finished size of the garment, the finished size of your garment, you would need to add or subtract depending on if it's positive or negative. Now, if it says no ease, if it says, size small, 34-inch bust, there is no ease to this sweater. It is a fitted sweater. You wouldn't need to do any math because you know that the sweater is going to measure 34 inches around because that's what the body size is. So it's important that designers include that. And, this is not something that is just taught always or figured out at first. I know at the beginning, I didn't hardly realize I knew what ease was when I first started designing. I didn't realize how much of a difference maker it could be, honestly. So a lot of my stuff in the beginning is just fitted, no ease. And it makes a big difference. So I don't know about most, but I think a lot of just plain shirts that you buy online or in the store, sweaters, tops, anything like that, most have about 2 to 3 inches of positive ease. So, as you can see, it's not tight to my skin. So it does have some ease. And this is just a regular fabric shirt. And I didn't realize that at the beginning, how much of a difference maker it would make on the look and the feel and the drape and everything. So yeah, a lot of my beginner patterns are if they're not updated already, they are just no ease, fitted. So I would use the measurements of the body measurements to figure out my stitch count, not realizing that positive ease makes such a great difference. So, and negative ease, depending on what you're making. So you'll get negative ease, you'll find negative ease in sometimes sweaters, hats often, because hats will stretch to fit, especially if they have a ribbing brim. You'll get a nice stretch with that. Let's see, socks I think have negative ease a lot. So sometimes, you will see negative ease, you'll see no ease, and there's nothing wrong with those. There's nothing wrong with no ease, having a sweater with no ease. Just know that it is going to be fitted and it's not going to have any extra room when you put it on. But yeah, so if you do run into that, if you run into a pattern with no ease or negative ease, you also want to consider what size you will do, because there is no, you're not going to have that extra room. So for me, most of my sweaters, unless I want it to be fitted or stretchy, super fitted and it stretches or whatever, do have positive ease. I prefer some extra room in my sweaters and tops so that I am just more comfortable. I don't find fitted sweaters very comfortable. So that's how I do it most of the time. If I want something oversized, I will add 6 to 8 inches of positive ease to my designs. And when I am designing, I will add that amount. So if it's a 34 and I'm adding 6 inches, that's 40 inches. I will use that 40 inches, that 40 number, to determine my stitch count. I'm not using the body size, I'm using the stitch count. So you got to take that into consideration when choosing your size. If you have a sweater pattern that you love and it is no ease and you would like some extra room in your garment, you can take a look at the sizes, and if you are a small 34-inch bust but you want some ease, if you move up to a medium, which would be a 38-inch bust, and it has and it has no ease, your sweater is gonna have about 4 inches of ease. Does that make sense? So 34 small, 38 medium, no ease. So if you go up a size, if you have a bust of 34 inches, but you go up to medium size, you'll have a 4-inch positive ease to your sweater. I hope that makes sense. So same when choosing. So say you have an oversized garment and you don't want it to be oversized. You want it to be fitted. Say, okay, my camellia sweater, it has 6 inches of positive ease, but you don't want it, you want it to be more fitted. You could go down a size, and you can determine that with ease. You can figure that out. It may fit perfectly for that. Does that make sense? I hope so. I hope so. It would have like no ease if you wanted to do it like that. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. Or a little bit of ease, just a little bit, not six inches. You can determine what it'll fit, if it'll fit. Oh, I'm blubbering my words. If you go down a size by looking at the ease and adding and subtracting as needed. So that's important to consider when looking at a pattern, when choosing the size you're going to make, when you determining what kind of fit you want. If it's an oversized garment and you want it oversized, then you would make your normal size. But if you want it to fit differently, you might want to do some math and figure out what it would fit if you size down or up, however you wanted to do that. Okay. I hope that made sense. If not, let me know in the comments. Ask me any questions you have. So now what about determining ease for, say, your own design? Say you're coming up with something on your own, or you're just tweaking something and for yourself or whatever. How do you determine what ease you need to have for that design? So first off, you need to think about, how do you want the fit? If you're making a hat, like I said, hats, usually if you have a brim, like a ribbed brim, it'll stretch very easily. So you want to have a negative ease, so that it'll fit. Otherwise it's going to be oversized and kind of slouchy. Well, I don't know, not slouchy, but it's going to be slightly oversized. It's not going to have that tight ribbed fit. But if you want an oversized hat, if you do want a big slouchy hat, then you would probably need either no ease or positive ease. Same with a sweater. If you want the sweater to be fitted, you would probably go with no ease. Sweaters are kind of, you don't see a lot of sweaters with negative ease, but then again you do, because you could, because if you have a stitch that is very stretchy, that has tons of give, or a yarn that stretches out easily, you might want to do a negative ease so that it will stretch around you to fit. So that's important to consider. What kind of ease, how do you want the fit? Do you want it fitted? Do you want it oversized? Do you want it just normal with just a little bit of give, your typical 2-inch positive ease type thing? Consider what you're making, and then consider what kind of fit you want. Then you also need to consider, and even if you're not designing, when you're working up someone else's pattern, this is important too. Consider what blocking will do to it. So whatever yarn you just determine you're using for a pattern you're following, or a design you're making on your own, you need to determine what blocking is going to do that, because blocking can make a huge difference. Washing can make a huge difference in how the fit is, the ease, whatever. So say you're using like a superwash wool and you block it and it grows another inch. You got to take that into consideration when you're designing, because if you're making something with 5 inches of positive ease and then it grows another inch, 6 inches of positive ease, it may be too oversized. Do you know what I'm saying? So you have to consider what yarn you're using and what blocking will do to it. Some yarns don't grow. Some yarns shrink. You have to be able to determine what will happen when it's washed or blocked, because you don't want something to shrink up too much or grow too big or whatever. I've totally had tons of fails and oops, that grew way too much. I've done the same thing. And now like I said, designing is such a learning experience. It's a constant learning experience. So, this hasn't even been 2 years where I'm figured out, okay, I need to block my yarn, my gauge swatch or whatever to determine what this yarn is going to do, so that when I recommend it for this design, I can say, hey, it grows or it doesn't, or it adds 2 inches when you block it or whatever. So that's a big factor, whether you're following a pattern or designing your own, because let's face it, we don't always use the the recommended yarn from the designer. So if you're using something different, especially if it's like a blend yarn or whatever, you need to make sure you take that into consideration, how much blocking, washing, whatever does to the yarn and how much it changes, if it grows or shrinks or whatever. You just need to make sure of that. So that's the next thing. And then you, when designing and determining ease for your own design or your own thing, you want to consider the drape and the give of the yarn and the stitch. So like we said, the blocking is important, but sometimes some yarns are stiffer and like don't stretch much. Some stretch a lot. Some stitches are, you know, tight and stay in place and all that. Some are very drapey and stretchy and flowy. You got to take into consideration all of that as well for when you are determining what you want to make. Because say you have determined that you want a sweater with negative ease, but you've chosen a stitch that has like no give and like doesn't stretch, doesn't flow, doesn't do anything. That's going to be really difficult. Like that's just going to be hard. You want something that's going to stretch over the body so that the negative ease is not too small. It's not going to, it's got to stretch. It's got to be able to stretch so that it will fit. Same thing for like a positive ease. If you have something that is super flowy, super drapey, very stretchy, all that, you're going to end up with something that's way too big, even if you want it oversized. So you also got to consider what the stitch does, if it stretches, if it doesn't, what you need for that fit that you want to accomplish that fit that you want. You got to make sure you're using a good stitch for that. So take that into consideration too. Once you've determined what fit you want, and I probably should have switched those two and said, okay, so you've determined what kind of fit you want, then determine the stitch and the yarn for the design, and how it, you know, stretches or doesn't stretch or whatever, what you need out of that. So if you want a negative ease, you want something that stretches. If you have something with positive ease, you might not want something that stretches as much or whatever. You got to determine that and then determine what it does after blocking. So this is kind of a trial and error. This is sometimes why it takes so long for designers to start the actual design, because we have to determine these things. We have to figure out what our yarn is going to do, what kind of fit we want, what blocking is going to do to it and stuff like that. And it's a lot of trial and error. Well, this stitch stretches a little too much. Let me try something else. That kind of thing. When we're designing. So that's a big part of it. So that you get the right fit and look and what, you know, how you want it to be, when it's finished. So I hope that makes sense. I know I've said that a bunch. But yeah, ease is important. But it's not super complicated either. So just determine, look for in a pattern, what the ease is. Most should say it. Some may not always, but, and then determine what you want. What size you want to make. So yeah, that is ease. I hope that was a little bit of a deeper dive for you. And if you have any questions, just let me know. I can totally clarify or whatever. So I hope that was helpful. All right, I'll be back next week with a new crochet related video. Until then, happy crocheting.